And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. And just moments ago, my friend Jason texted me and said, the weather's so beautiful in the Coachella Valley. We should play golf one day this week. Boy, would I love to do that. Mr. Randy Weggs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, let's dip back in and hear more of the stand-up routine of Grandpa Joe.
People should be able to trust that when they get advice from a so-called expert, they're getting real help, not getting ripped off. A little like going to your doctor. Anyway, I won't get into this because it makes me frustrated when I do.
You know, last night I was watching an old episode of The Family Feud, and I can't tell you how much Joe Biden reminds me of Richard Dawson. Because Richard Dawson would literally start to fall asleep as he was making the introduction, and then he'd wake up and he'd get real loud.
And then we went to sleep.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can get him online at joecrummey.com and follow him on Twitter at Joe Crummey. Joe Crummey, how are you, sir?
You know, I am fine. By the way, I caught you had Larry Elder on a couple of days ago, and you guys were talking about, he asked you a question, and I thought it was great. He asked you a question of why those nicknames that Trump gives other people, when people try to give them to him, they don't stick. And I thought your response was right on the money, that Trump does it with a sense of humor, because it started me thinking about one time I watched Bill de Blasio, who obviously hated Trump, on the air with Joe Scarborough one morning, MSNBC years ago, 3-4 years ago. And de Blasio said to him, he says, I've got the perfect nickname for Trump. And, Joe was all ears. Ooh, what is it? And de Blasio goes, Condom. What do you think? And it was really funny because it's not funny, but they thought it was really funny. But it was like mean-spirited, exactly what you were talking about a couple of days ago. It just keep that memory, and I thought I'd mention it to you.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've had many conversations about this with our mutual friend Doug McIntyre, who started out in Hollywood as a sitcom writer. And a bunch of comedy writers sit around in a room and they come up with scripts, they come up with ideas, they come up with jokes, they come up with dialogue. They put it together, it's funny, and then they put it in front of focus groups. And then they allow executives to look at it and give you notes. And they run through all of these different stupid machines before they finally end up with a product that started out as funny and then ends up completely stupid and gets canceled immediately, because funny is just funny, and you can't have experts and workshop these things. It just either is or it isn't.
You know, it is a fascinating subject, because you're either funny or you're not. And there's a lot of people who try to be funny and think they're funny, and they even force to laugh like it's funny. I mean, the whole Bill de Blasio thing, he's not funny. Joe Scarborough, not funny. And yet they thought they were being funny, and it wasn't funny at all. And it was just like, it was, as you said, just sort of mean and angry, pretending as though it was fun.
Randy, let's play Joe some bits of Joe Biden trying to do stand-up while he's speaking in front of a group of seniors.
Here is Joe Biden on junk fees.
You know, for example, my administration banned banks and credit unions from charging fees for basic service like checking your account balance. I love that one. You know, I got so damn mad when I found, anyway. Retrieving old bank records, that's really hard to do, man. Or looking up your balance for your loan, on your loan. That's a killer, man. That costs so much money for those banks. But look, they charge up to $30 for these services. And, you know, when you've bounced a few checks like I did, you know, when I was trying to get started, anyway, that's over. That's over. We've taken those fees. They're now illegal.
Joe, I hear he's regarded as a comedy genius in France.
Well, it's funny because I used some of that audio on today's podcast, the part about bouncing checks. It's really, I don't know. I think people laugh because they think, in this case, I heard people laugh, but they probably laughed because they felt they had to. It's not that funny. It's kind of weird, not speaking to the whole, he's not funny thing, but he's always talking about these little, junk fees and all this crap. Meanwhile, you've got a Shiite storm going down all over the planet. And he's talking about, hey, I'll save you 30 cents on this. It's kind of like, it's like, I'm going to get those evil banks. You wanted your balance checked. Actually, that's, if you want your balance checked, I can see why they might want a fee for that. It's stupid, but I can see that. But, he spends his time on that. Or who was it? Kamala Harris was talking about you're going to, on the new buses, the electric buses, you're going to be able to recharge your iPhone. I'm thinking, oh, well, thanks. So that's great. They have all these stupid little things that they think that you and I are going to really like. Here's some real stupid stuff for you people. Look, I'm working hard for you. And meanwhile, you take a look at the cost of your groceries or energy costs are sky high, but they're going to save you 30 cents.
Does Joe's delivery remind you of Richard Dawson as much as it does to me? Because I was watching this old episode of The Feud last night, and he'll start to introduce one of the family members, especially if it's a young woman, and he'll start to just trail off, and it looks like he's fallen asleep, and then you realize he's just leering at her cleavage, and then at a certain point, he wakes up and then gets real loud and starts barking orders to pick a lollipop.
Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the whole cleavage thing, because that to me is where Richard Dawson, if I recall correctly, he used to go plant kisses on all the women, and it was kind of weird. I remember, so that was very Biden-esque right there. Remember that? Didn't you see it last night? It's been a while since I've watched, like you, reruns of The Feud. I don't know. There's a thing called Netflix. You might want to check it out. But anyway, to each his own. But yeah, he would always cozy up to the chicks. Was he doing it last night on the reruns?
He was, yes. He just goes from one to the next, and he leers at their cleavage and then plants one right on their lips. Not on their cheeks, on their lips.
Right, I know. I remember watching it. How long has that show been off the air? I still remember. That's the one thing I remember about the show is that it was kind of a creepy kind of feeling when, if you're coming on the show, Richard's coming after you. But that's sort of the way Joe is, too. Joe's going to move in for the kill. He's going to get his pound of flesh one way or the other, too.
So earlier in the week, I had Dick Morris on, or maybe it was at the end of last week, and he's promoting a new book that's about the current election cycle. It's about Joe Biden, those sorts of things. But I love the Clinton stories from Dick Morris because he spent so much time with both Bill and Hillary Clinton back when he was governor of Arkansas and then again when he was in the White House. And one of the questions I asked him, both Bill and Hillary Clinton both peg me as being cursors. Usually I can tell a cursor from 100 miles away, someone who maybe not in public swears, but in private has an absolutely filthy mouth. He said it's not true about either one, that neither one of them swear, but they yell all the time. Does that surprise you?
Yes, it does. I thought certainly Hillary was capable of anything. I am rather surprised by that. And the same thing with Bill. Maybe he's not being completely forthcoming about that. I think we all agree that they probably yelled at each other. There's all these old stories about how Hillary used to throw stuff at Bill. The fascinating thing about their relationship is that they stay together, even though that guy was all over the road. And you've got to wonder. That's what. Did you ask him that?
I didn't ask him that, but I kind of got the impression that they're two peas in a pod. They're very ambitious people, and they both get power from being with one another, and it was just pretty much as simple as that.
That the most obvious explanation may be exactly the right one because, and she was, I think, you'd think kind of embarrassed by it, he possibly even humiliated by it. But you may be right that she was that he was her ticket, especially in the very beginning, and then she was able to step out on her own, after he, left the office. But yeah, maybe that's the simplest explanation. Maybe that's exactly it.
What do you make of what's going on right now with RFK Jr., who was running in the Democratic primary? Then he decided to drop out of the Democratic primary, run as an independent. He's doing okay. I mean, he's doing double digits in all the polls I've seen. However, he's had some problems, Joe. A guy showed up with a loaded weapon claiming to be a U.S. Marshal at one of his campaign appearances. He asked the Biden administration for Secret Service protection because they're worried about assassination. Biden said, no, we're not giving it to you. Then most recently, some nutty realtor apparently got onto his property, broke into his house, and then got arrested. And then because we have no bail in Los Angeles, they let him out immediately. And then they found him on RFK Jr.'s property a second time in the same day, and they still won't give him Secret Service protection.
Well, that first of all, that knife incident or whatever it was here in L.A.
Oh, yeah.
I think. Yeah, it was here in L.A. Well, I mean, they obviously look. You really understand, the whole political triangulation situation here. They probably are worried that he might siphon a few votes away from Joe, so they don't want him around. Whereas I've also seen people say he would siphon votes away from Trump as well, because he's sort of like this populist guy. So I don't think he has any friends on either side of the aisle right now. The right wingers have been coming after him lately, saying what a lefty wacko he is. You don't want him around. And yet, he's got that populist streak a mile wide, as does Trump. And then the lefties, the people that like Biden, don't like him because they're worried he might draw from them as well. And so he doesn't have any friends on either side of the aisle.
No, but I would be worried about my own personal safety. I mean, first, look at the family history. And then you have all of these security breaches that have taken place here in Los Angeles. You have to say to yourself, this guy needs Secret Service protection.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, John. I think I heard the story last week that wacko showed up at the house in the morning. They had him arrested, and then by nightfall he was back again. This is insane. And I don't understand why RFK Jr. is being as nice about it as he is. I mean, screaming. That's pretty tough. I mean, and he's saying a lot of the right things. I don't worry for me, but I worry about my wife and family and all that. But that's got to be tough. I mean, given his history and why Biden won't do this, it seems to me that the people that are running the White House are playing hardball.
Well, Joe, the guy that broke into his house was a realtor. Maybe he just wanted the listing.
Yeah, there you go. I got to have this list. I don't know. I mean, I just think they're playing hardball, and that RFK Jr. says a lot of things that I really like. He doesn't do everything I like. I understand that, but he's a very thoughtful guy. I mean, if you listen to, say, the president or the vice president or even Alejandro Mayorkas, who got in a big fight yesterday with Josh Hawley, I thought it was very revealing. They're only surface level talking points. They never go any deeper. They expect you to be satisfied by that and saving 30 cents on your bank transactions. That's fine, but they never go deep. The thing about RFK Jr. is he does. And again, I don't think, the average guy is thinking as deeply about politics as RFK Jr., but they do worry about him, that he will draw votes, I'm assuming, from Joe Biden. So they don't like that. They want to squash that guy, and they want to make it as miserable for him as they can. And if they don't assign him any protection, if I were RFK Jr., I'd have personal protection. Don't you assume he would, John?
Yes. I thought all presidential candidates were given Secret Service protection.
No, I'm not talking about that. If I were RFK Jr., I'm assuming he's got, a couple of bucks kicking around somewhere. I'm thinking he would have his own people.
He does. He has Gavin DeBecker. Those are Jeff Bezos' people.
You're right. No, I know Gavin DeBecker. I know exactly who he is. So, yeah, so I'm assuming he's already got people on the payroll anyway. But, Biden isn't going to help him out.
Have you seen the pictures of RFK Jr. with his shirt off?
Yeah, the guy is ripped. I mean, it's kind of wild. You know, it makes me think I need to get to work. Like 69 or 70, and he looks great.
You think he's on steroids?
Oh, see, now. Oh, don't wreck it for me, man. I was thinking, I want to be that guy. You know, now it's just a matter of dope. Oh, great. I don't know. I mean, you know, I've seen him do push-ups. I've seen him with his shirt off. I think he looks ripped. It's kind of cool. He's 69 or 70 years old.
Well, that could be a selling point. Vote for me. Vote for the guy on steroids, because if there's anything that's going to make Hamas back off, it's having Chris Benoit in the White House.
Exactly. I'm jacked. Come and get me. Yeah.
Who else running for president has impressed you so far?
Let's see now. Certainly not Nikki Haley. I'm sorry, but she really turned me off when she was talking about, I guess the Palestinians in Gaza, that they're really, a lot of them are really nice people and we should take them into the United States. I mean, she said that. I go, okay, you're done. She's off my radar.
Yeah, I don't like her either.
Oh, man, I don't dig that at all. I thought that was a very stupid thing to say. Hamas has had an entire generation of people that they can, indoctrinate and turn into the ugliest, nastiest anti-Semites on the planet. And here's Nikki Haley talking about how they're all fine people. King Abdullah Jordan doesn't want any of these people. He's it was weird when I heard him speak. He sounded like a Wall Street banker. I was expecting him to sound like some guy, out of right out of Lebanon or something like that. No way. King Abdullah said a bright red line. I don't want any of those people in Jordan. And he said, I'm also speaking on behalf of Egypt, too. I thought that was rather presumptuous. But, he said, I don't want those people. And he was pretty honest about it, or very clear about it. He said, they cause trouble. Situations on the ground. He said, I don't want them. And, he's being honest about it. These people, and I feel sorry for what has happened, but Hamas has had a whole basic generation now. If you take a look at the demographics on the ground in Gaza, which would be a terrible place to be right now, I think about 50% of the population is under 25 or 30 years of age.
Yeah, it's a very young population. And I'll tell you what else. Speaking of young people, are you surprised to see all of the demonstrations on the college campuses that we've seen?
Yes. I mean, I am very surprised. I just watched some video from Harvard. They're right there, and they're surrounding this Jewish guy, and they're not. It's not a protest. People are calling it. No, they were intimidating this guy, and it was. I am surprised by the explosion of anti-Semitism worldwide now. And in a way, maybe it's a good thing that it's exposed, because I was talking about it on the podcast today. It's like maybe it's time, this planet get its act together where this stuff is concerned and stop looking the other way. I am surprised, and I am kind of alarmed by it. And I'm also alarmed by where I see it, which is in a lot of college campuses. I'm seeing it in London. I'm seeing it in Paris. I'm seeing it in New York City. I'm seeing it in a lot of places. And I think it's time this planet get its act together here. This is nonsense. And in a way, it's good that it's come out, because it needs to be addressed. I mean, we had the guy on the show today, the Hamas guy. What's his name? It'll come to me in a minute. Some guy that's their PR guy.
Oh, the guy that has the blotch on his head.
Yes. It's the guy with the blotch. His name is Hamas, some guy. I don't know, whatever. But I had used him today, and he's, said, we're taking out Israel. We hate them. We're going to do it again. And I'm thinking, this guy is walking around Lebanon, going on TV, and I'm surprised, just between you and me, we're talking privately here on KBC. Somebody hasn't taken that guy out. What do you mean? He's just free to walk around? That's it. Yeah, that's it. How did he get there? Was he in Gaza? And
I'll tell you,
in Lebanon?
You see all of these people, all of these big-name journalists with all the big networks that have been on TV for a long time, and they always try to do the same thing whenever they have a politician that they're trying to sink. They ask these trick questions, and they try to make them look like political extremists. And I always say the same thing. You don't have to trick someone into telling you that they're an extremist. People who have very fringe beliefs are perfectly happy to tell you that they have fringe beliefs. If you meet a 9/11 truther, you don't have to trick them into telling you. It's the only thing they want to talk about.
Well, the Hamas guy was totally doing that. And, I mentioned Alejandro Mayorkas yesterday, got into a big thing with Josh Hawley. See, this is a problem. Hawley, maybe admittedly, was trying to make Mayorkas look bad. I mean, I'll grant everybody that. But it was about a Palestinian sympathizer who, on her social media account on October 7th, when Hamas was flying in and just killing 300 people at the Peace Festival and all that, this employee was cheering it on and saying how great it was. And Howley put that as sort of a gotcha question to Mayorkas yesterday on Capitol Hill and said, well, what are you going to do about it? She works for you. And Mayorkas, instead of saying, gee, I didn't know about that, or, I did take care of it, or it's not cool, or whatever it was, got all defensive, and he started talking about the fact that he's actually a Jew. He's a Cuban Jew. I didn't know that. So his mom and dad both were. And they came, I think, to the United States after the Cuban thing happened in 1959. He went to Beverly Hills High School. But the interesting thing about it was, and he goes, they're Jews, and how dare you talk to me like that and all that. He never answered the question. They don't want to talk about, they don't want to deal with Hamas like that. They don't want to say anything negative about the Palestinians or something. They'd rather not. And it's kind of weird that he never answered the question.
Joe Crummey, host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can get him online at joecrummey.com and follow him on Twitter at Joe Crummey. Joe, thanks so much for stopping by. We'll chat again real soon.
My pleasure, John. Have a good one.
You too. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to the podcast edition of this program, that is easy to do.
That's right. Just go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all of the episodes, or even easier than that, listen to the KABC app, download it, search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. Best way to listen live to this station whenever you're outside the AM radio signal, or if you have one of those weird cars that doesn't have an AM radio, like a Tesla. And then you can also download all the podcasts of this show. It works with CarPlay. It's fantastic. But if you listen, remember, don't take things too seriously. Don't get road ragey listening to this show and end up like this woman. Go forward! No!
And coming up later on this month, we're going on the road.
That's right. Come see us broadcast live Friday, November 17th at the brand new Gelson's West LA at West Edge on the corner of Olympic and Bundy. The Gelson's West LA at West Edge opens today. It's open now. If you're in the West Side, check out the brand new Gelson's. It's gorgeous. We're going to be broadcasting live Friday, November 17th at the Beer, Wine, and Sushi Bar. It's going to be great. We'll see you there.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do it right now. 790 KABC welcomes Richard Mark Solo and KT Tunstall at the Cerritos Center for the Performing Arts, November 12th. Tickets are on sale now at CerritosCenter.com. Excuse me. And right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by the Cerritos Center for Performing Arts. Good luck dialing.
It's Woo Wednesday.
Ric Flair.
It's Woo Wednesday. Yeah, baby. Woo, 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 woo.
And Randy, that means tomorrow is Throwback Thursday.
That's right. And we got so many fantastic suggestions. We're going to file some away, and we'll definitely use them in the future. Unfortunately, we can only pick one. We're getting so many emails, we might have to do Throwback Tuesday. But here's one from KT. Randy, I've been a fan since the Conway and Whitman days, and I've been trying to get through on the phone and suggest old WWF wrestling theme songs. I think John would love it.
I think you're right. So that means what? Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man, the Honky Tonk Man, all the greats from the 80s.
Entrance music to 80s wrestlers. That's the theme. Make your suggestions of the ones that you want to hear at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone that participated in Throwback Thursday. We really appreciate it.
Looking forward to tomorrow's Throwback Thursday. For more on open mic night at the nursing home, here's Randy Wang.
Let's hear Grampy Joe's routine on trickle-down economics.
When I ran for president, I promised we'd not continue the trickle-down economics of the past. Not a whole lot trickled down on my dad's kitchen table, as I recall. Well, I'm serious. My dad worked like hell. We were a typical middle-class family. We lived in a development of rural, when cities were expanding.
I feel like we're getting off track.
Just slightly.
Cities were expanding and people were moving out in the farm areas. We lived in a development of 35 homes, split-level homes. We had a 3-bedroom home with 4 kids and a grandpa lived with us. The walls were thinned. I wondered how my mom and dad got through, and I look back on it. But all kidding aside, there wasn't a whole lot to
Wait, that's not a real laugh.
No, that's not a real laugh, and this is dangerously close to Abe Simpson talking about tying an onion to his belt.
But all kidding aside, there wasn't a whole lot to trickle down on my dad's kitchen table. My dad worked like hell. It represented the moment we walked away from how this country was built when we got into the trickle-down series.
What do you think, Johnny? Is it Abe Simpson time?
Let's listen to Abe Simpson.
Like the time I caught the ferry over to Shelbyville, I needed a new heel for my shoe. So I decided to go to Morganville, which is what they call Shelbyville in those days. So I tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Now, to take the ferry cost a nickel, and in those days, nickels had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 B's for a quarter, you'd say. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. The important thing was that I had an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. They didn't have white onions because of the war. The only thing you could get was those big yellow ones.
Whoever wrote that is a genius. Maybe it was our pal Ken Levine. He wrote for The Simpsons. All right, before the show ends, we have more on that woman in Long Beach who was sexually assaulted by a bum that George Gascon regards as a misdemeanor.
That's right. Her name is Rebecca Peterson, and she talked to a whole bunch of different people yesterday. She talked to Channel 2, she talked to Channel 11, she talked to Channel 7, she talked to some other radio stations, and I got to have you hear some more of the things that she said. We all know the story. We all know what's going on with the Long Beach prosecutor pushing back and telling Gascon to do his job and charge this rapist with a felony. Well, here's some of the things that she told KCAL.
I think that the only type of rehabilitation for someone who has no self-control over their genitals just needs to be castrated. I think that's the only kind of rehabilitation that you can have.
I like her.
She is going for it.
You can see his hand go out to the side as he's pulling on his genitals right before he lifts my dress up. If that's not intent, I don't know what is.
She's a better attorney than George Gascon, and I don't even think she has a law degree.
Again, how is this not attempted rape? Tell me you want me to get raped more, or that you're punishing me because I got away. That's what it also feels like.
She's not wrong.
No, she's not, and she's not going to be quiet anymore. I'm expecting a lot more from her as we put a lot of public pressure to get George Gascon to do his freaking job.
And I hope she sticks around and tells her story as George Gascon runs for re-election, because all of the voters need to hear this, especially the female voters.
And every elected official that has supported him or hasn't condemned him, they need to be asked about the Long Beach incident and about the Harbor Gateway incident, because if they support Gascon, they do not support women.
All right, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another live and local edition of The John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's 2:46. Let's take a look at the roads.